This is something I talked about a couple of months ago back in January of 2025. Um, the idea of a new Resident Evil movie is something that a lot of people are really into, and it's something that might actually happen. And the reason I say that is because the word that's going around is that we're supposed to be getting a Resident Evil film sometime in fall of 2026. I believe it's supposed to be coming out in like September, or at least that's the targeted premiere date for the film. And it's going to be distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing. And obviously, Resident Evil is a Capcom IP. It's supposed to be directed by Zach Krieger, a guy who works on horror films. He worked on a horror film called The Barbarian in 2022 and a film called Weapons, which is supposed to be coming out in August 8th of this year. And and yeah, like this is a guy who also like starred in a couple of sitcoms like Friends with Benefits, Guys with Kids, and Wrecked. So some people might be familiar with him, but I don't think he's ever like directed or produced a video game based movie or anything like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. But obviously, he has experience in producing horror films, so a lot of people are interested to see what that's going to be like. But the question is, what particular game are we going to get an adaptation of? Um, I would like to see an adaptation of either Resident Evil 2, 3, or 4, but in a lot of people's eyes, the most popular installments are like 2 and 4. And the reason I say that is because 2 and 4 are among like the best selling games within with the entire franchise, at least the remakes are. I believe the Resident Evil 2 remake did like over 15 mil in sales. Resident Evil 4 did like around 10 mil in sales when it came out back in 2023. And you have Resident Evil Biohazard that I believe that was Resident Evil 7 that came out like during the late teens. That did like around 15 mil in terms of overall sales. It was really popular, but at the same time, Ethan Winters is not nearly as big of a name or not nearly as iconic as Leon S. Kennedy or Joe Valentine or characters who are like really popular in some of the older installments. And and I don't know, like Joe Valentine was the main character in Resident Evil 3, and it seems like Capcom hasn't done much with her since Resident Evil 5. And I think that was the last time she ever like really made a canon appearance in a game. And I think she was like Wesker's pawn or what have you. And since then, they had no plans on bringing her back. I don't think she's even coming back for Resident Evil 9. And a lot of people felt like she was going to be like a central character in that game, or they were going to go back to her in some way. But apparently, that's not happening. We're getting a brand new protagonist for Resident Evil 9. But but yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what particular game we're going to get a film adaptation of, or whether or not it's going to be just like a standalone film that's gonna be loosely based off of any of the games that I mentioned. But I am really looking forward to it, especially if it includes like iconic characters. I feel like seeing a Joe Valentine or Leon S. Kennedy or Chris Redfield on the big screen would be cool if you find the right actor or actress for those roles. Um, and yeah, I honestly feel like a Resident Evil film in this day and age is something that would appeal to casual gamers and just like casuals in general more so than some of the older films, because Resident Evil is obviously a bigger name than it was back in the 90s or the 2000s or even the teens for that matter. And as far as survival horror video games are concerned, I feel like Resident Evil is like the top franchise out there right now, and it's one of Capcom's best IPs like overall. I think that IP has like made Capcom more money than most of their other IPs that they've had like since the 80s or the 90s or what have you. And and if if we really are getting a Resident Evil film next year, because that's basically what's been going around. That's the rumor that's been like that's been surfacing around the web as of late. It's going to be competing with the Super Mario Brothers movie, the second one, and I honestly feel like that's going to be a pretty big deal. I'm not exactly sure whether or not the Resident Evil movie would do better in box office sales in comparison to the second Super Mario Brothers movie, because the first Super Mario Brothers movie did over 1 billion in terms of sales, and I feel like that's a I don't know. I feel like that film set the bar really high for like future video game movies. I don't expect Mortal Kombat 2, the movie that we're supposed to be getting in October 2025, to surpass that, to be honest with you, because it looks cool, but at the same time, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's quite as fun as the older Mortal Kombat films from the 90s. And I feel like Mortal Kombat 2 or this upcoming film takes itself way too seriously. Johnny Cage as a character, takes himself way too seriously, and people like the old Johnny Cage. I was kind of a douchey goofball or what have you, but I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna give this film a chance. I'm definitely gonna check it out when it hits the theaters. The Resident Evil film, I would love to check it out when it hits the films next fall, because I feel like the stories for the games I mentioned would be like really interesting. Like the thing with Ethan Winters, trying to I don't know, search for his missing wife, but I feel like it's highly unlikely that they'll start with that particular game. I feel like they're going to start with Resident Evil 2, with Leon and his partner, and I feel like that's something that would really get people talking, especially um, considering how popular Resident Evil 2 is, how legendary it is, how well it stands the test of time, how well the game is sold, back in the 90s and even like within the past couple of years. And yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what the budget for the film's going to be, because there's not too much details on what to expect. I feel like we're not going to learn more about it until like I don't know, like right before the film comes out, or maybe sometime during the start of next year. But it's definitely going to be a big deal. I'm crossing my fingers, hoping that it doesn't get delayed. It's going to be one of the biggest Capcom films that we're going to get in like quite some time. And I feel like, if done right, it could be a great survival horror movie. And obviously, Resident Evil is kind of different from Silent Hill, because it seemed like Silent Hill has been getting a lot of mainstream attention as of late. And I feel like, Konami's Silent Hill is going to be competing with like Resident Evil more and more as the years go by. But obviously, Resident Evil is more popular in my opinion, because I feel like Capcom has been more consistent with the series. While with Silent Hill, it seemed like the popularity of the franchise kind of went off a cliff after the 2000s, and I think Silent Hill F is like the first, main entry that we're going to get in quite some time. So I do feel like the Resident Evil franchise holds the edge over a lot of other survival horror franchises, and yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to learning more details about this. And again, I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that the premiere date doesn't get pushed back to 2027.